we're much more than a label.
Yeah.
And what I have found, and Joe and I, this always fascinated Joe, that when I give him the data points, that 95% of people, leaders, believe that they're self-aware. And when I ask that question in the room, 95% plus,
hands go up.
They go
Absolutely.
up. Absolutely.
Yep.
But in fact, only 10 to 15% actually are. And the reason for that is that you have individuals, most who are in their roles because they've had some level of success.
Yep.
And in those particular cases, those people usually are pretty introspective, very reflective, but that's only half of the equation. That's the internal self-awareness. Yeah. It's the external self-awareness that really is the difference and the gap in between. And external self-awareness for a leader's perspective, or, especially when you think about, the organizations that you worked with, those leaders don't understand how they show up to others. And the only way to get the answers to that test is by simply asking the question. Yeah. How do I show up, right? What's working, what's not working? And I think we tend to, what I like to call the default future, we do the same things day after day after day, right? I mean, think about, you wake up in the morning, you shower, maybe you eat breakfast, get a cup of coffee, you drive the same way to work. You do that day after day. Yep. Your end of day routine is the same.
Well, sure. I mean, we're creatures of habit.
We are.
Because it's comfortable.
We are.
And it's known.
You said the big word there, comfortable. And so that gap that we're talking about is who we think we are as leaders, as people. Yeah. Truly, this isn't just a leadership thing. This is a human behavior thing versus how we land on others, right? Yeah. What did you see in the world that you're in that really talks about that gap?
And it's a great point. And this is what I actually focus a lot of my work on today is, there is the how do I show up for others, but how I think I do, right? That's my intentions versus the others' behaviors. And we can get into that a little bit later on. But what I call that is the difference between performance assumptions and performance alignment.
Excellent. I like that.
So that to me is the gap when I'm working with organizations. What I saw consistently in motorsports is that there was performance alignment, meaning that, and I'll take a step back to what the assumption is, right? Let me lead with that one.
Sure.
So people go, oh yeah, Mike, I get what you're talking about. Like rarely have I seen organizational teams that are misaligned on the objective, the strategy, the tactic. Where are we going? What do we got to get done? How are we going to get there? All of that. Usually everyone's like, yep, we got it. Where things typically go off the rails, and maybe you can relate to this, or other leaders out there can relate to this, is when people then show up to do the work. Because I assume that your definition of timely is the same as my definition of timely. Right. I assume that your definition of accountability is the same as mine. Transparent communication, right? Support, all those things. Now, those are performance assumptions. And we see that showing up in teams where, the leader says, or the company leader says, I don't understand this. Why is this happening again? I don't understand why we agreed to this, but we keep stubbing our toes. And that was in racing. I'll tell you, there was nothing but alignment. And performance alignment is truly getting into the guts of the conversation of what do these things mean to us as a team, how we're going to show up, how we are going to look out for each other, right? Going down the line to make sure that there was no assumption